Earthfire.
His father's life had reached its end. He fought for each breath with more force than he had once used underground to shoulder 200-jin iron roof supports. His face was deathly pale, his eyes bulged, and his lips had turned a dark purple from suffocation, as if an invisible noose were tightening slowly around his neck. All the plain hopes and dreams of a life of hard labor had vanished. Now his whole being wanted only one thing: to draw in a little more air. But his lungs, like the lungs of every miner with stage 3 silicosis, had become a black lump of ash bound together by a mesh of fibers, no longer able to carry the oxygen he inhaled into his blood.
The coal dust that made up that lump had been breathed in bit by bit during his 25 years underground. It also proved how much coal he had brought out in his life.
Liu Cixin knelt beside the hospital bed. The shrill whistle from his father's windpipe cut at his heart again and again. Suddenly, he heard something mixed into that whistling. He realized his father was trying to speak. "What, Dad? What are you saying, Dad?"
His father's protruding eyes fixed on his son, and the noise within that dying breath repeated itself more urgently. Liu Cixin screamed again until his voice was raw.
The noise ceased. The breathing weakened, then became a series of faint spasms. Then everything stopped. But his father's lifeless eyes still stared anxiously at his son, as if desperate to know whether Liu Cixin had understood his last words.
Liu Cixin entered a daze. He did not know how his mother fainted beside the bed, nor how the nurse removed the oxygen tube from his father's nostrils. He heard only that noise echoing in his mind, every syllable carved into memory as precisely as if it had been cut into a record.
For the next few months, he remained in that daze. The noise tormented him day and night until he felt he, too, was suffocating. What stopped him from breathing was that noise. If he wanted to live, he had to understand what it meant. Then one day, his mother, also long ill, told him that he was grown now, that he had to hold up the family, that he should stop going to high school and go to the mine to take his father's place.
Still dazed, he picked up his father's lunch pail and left home. In the winter wind of 1978, he walked toward the mine, toward his father's number 2 shaft. He saw the black mouth of the shaft like an eye watching him. The string of explosion-proof lamps leading into the depths was the pupil of that eye. It was his father's eye. The noise rang rapidly in his mind until it became a thunderclap, and then at last he understood his father's final words. "Do not go down the mine section break." 25 years later, Liu Cixin felt that his Mercedes was out of place here, glaringly so. The mine now had a few tall buildings and more restaurants and shops lined the road, but everything was shrouded in a gray atmosphere.
When the car reached the mining bureau, Liu Cixin saw a dark mass of people sitting in the square before the bureau office building. He walked through the seated crowd toward the building. Among people in work clothes and cheap undershirts, he, in his suit and leather shoes, again felt out of place. They watched him pass in silence. Countless gazes pierced his $2,000 designer suit like steel needles, making his whole body prickle.
On the broad steps before the bureau building, he met Li Mingsheng, his middle school classmate, now chief engineer of the geology office. The man still had the same thin monkey look from 20 years before, with an added haggard weariness. He held a roll of drawings, and even that seemed a heavy burden to him.
The mine has not paid wages for half a year. The workers are staging a sit-in. After the greetings, Li Mingsheng pointed to the crowd in front of the office building and said this while looking Liu Cixin up and down, as if he were looking at some alien thing.
Even with the Daichin Railway and with the state limiting production these past 2 years,
things still have not improved. They improved for a while, then went bad again. That is what this industry is. I do not think anyone can do anything about it.
Li Mingsheng sighed deeply and turned to leave, as if there were something on Liu Xin that made him want to get away quickly. But Liu Xin stopped him. "Do me a favor." Li Mingsheng gave a bitter smile and said,
"More than 10 years ago at City Number 1 High, you were so hungry you could barely eat, but you still refused the meal tickets we secretly put in your school bag. Now you are the last person who needs anyone's help."
No, I do need help. Can you find a small coal seam underground, a very small one, with reserves of no more than 30,000 tons? The key is that it must be as isolated as possible, with as few connections to other seams as you can find. That should be possible, I suppose.
I need detailed geological data for that seam and its surroundings. The more detailed, the better. That is possible too.
Then we will talk in detail tonight.
Lu Xin said this. Li Mingsheng turned to leave again, and Lu Xin stopped him once more. "Do you not want to know what I plan to do? Right now, I am interested only in my own survival. Same as them." He tilted his head toward the crowd and turned away.
Lu Xin climbed the stairs worn by time. On the high walls inside, settled coal dust looked like huge ink paintings of clouds and mountains. The large oil painting Chairman Mao goes to Anyuan still hung there. It was clean, untouched by coal dust, but both frame and canvas showed the marks of years. The deep, quiet gaze of the man in the painting fell on Liu Xin again after more than 20 years, and at last he felt he had come home.
On the second floor, the bureau director's office was still where it had been 20 years before. The two big doors had later been covered with leather, and the leather had later torn. Liu Cixin pushed the door open and saw the director bent over his desk, absorbed in a huge drawing, his half-white head facing the doorway. Up close, Liu Cixin saw that it was an excavation progress map for a mine.
"You are the person in charge of that ministry project, are you not?"
The director asked. He only lifted his head once, then lowered it again to study the drawing. "Yes. It is a very long-term project. Well, we will cooperate as much as we can, but you have seen the situation in front of us."
The director raised his head and extended his hand. When Liu Xin shook it, he saw another face, with the same haggard weariness as Li Mingsheng's. He also felt that two of the director's fingers were deformed, the result of an old underground work injury.
"Go to Deputy Director Zhang, who handles research, or to Chief Engineer Zhao. I have no time. I am truly sorry. When you have some results, we can talk again."
After saying this, the director turned his attention back to the drawing.
You knew my father. You were a technician on his crew.
Lu Xin spoke his father's name. The director nodded. A good worker. A good team leader.
What do you think of the current state of the coal industry?
Lu Xin asked suddenly. He felt only a sharp thrust into the subject would catch this man's attention.
What do I think of it?
The director asked, without raising his head.
The coal industry is a typical traditional industry, a backward industry, a sunset industry. It is labor-intensive, its working conditions are terrible, and its output efficiency is low. Transporting the product takes up enormous carrying capacity. Coal mining was once an important part of British industry, but Britain closed all its coal mines 10 years ago.
We cannot close ours.
The director said, still without looking up, "Yes, but we must change it. Completely change the production method of the coal industry. Otherwise, we will never get out of this predicament." Liu Xin strode to the window and pointed at the crowd outside.
Coal miners, Millions upon millions of coal miners will never see their fate fundamentally changed. I came this time to, have you ever been underground? The director interrupted him.
No. After a silence, Liu Cixin added,
Before he died, my father would not let me go down.
You kept your promise, the director said. He was bent over the drawing, so Liu Cixin could not see his expression or his eyes. The prickling sensation returned to Liu Xin's body. He felt hot. In this season, his suit and tie were fit only for an air-conditioned room. There was no air conditioning here.
Please listen to me. I have a goal, a dream. It began when my father died. For that dream, that goal, I went to university, then went abroad for my doctorate. I want to completely change the production method of the coal industry and change the fate of coal miners. Keep it simple. I have no time.
The director pointed backward with his hand. Liu Cixin did not know whether he meant the seated crowd outside the window.
Just a moment. I will make it as simple as I can. The production method of the coal industry is this. In an extremely poor working environment, with dense labor and very low efficiency, coal is dug out from underground. Then enormous rail, road and shipping capacity is used to move the coal to where it is needed. Then the coal is fed into gas generators to produce gas, or sent to power plants, where mills grind it and feed it into boilers for combustion.
Simpler. More direct.
My idea is to turn a coal mine into one enormous gas generator, so that coal in the seam becomes combustible gas while still underground. Then we extract that gas by surface drilling, the way we extract oil or natural gas, and send it through dedicated pipelines to the point of use. The boilers in thermal power plants, which consume the most coal, can burn gas as well. In this way, mines will disappear, and the coal industry will become a brand new modern industry, utterly different from what it is now.
You think your idea is fresh?
Liu Cixin did not think his idea was fresh. He also knew that this director, an outstanding graduate of the Mining Institute in the 1960s, and now one of the country's most authoritative coal mining experts, would not think it fresh either. Of course, the director knew that underground coal gasification had been a worldwide research topic for decades. In those decades, countless research institutes and multinational corporations had developed countless coal gasification catalysts. Yet underground coal gasification remained a dream humanity had been dreaming for nearly a century. The reason was simple. Those catalysts cost far more than the gas they produced.
Listen, I can achieve underground coal gasification without using catalysts. How? At last the director pushed aside the drawing in front of him and seemed to listen intently. This encouraged Liu Cixin greatly, set the underground coal on fire.
There was a long silence. The director stared straight at Liu Cixin, lit a cigarette, and eagerly motioned for him to continue. But Liu Xin's excitement suddenly cooled. He had already seen the true nature of the director's interest and enthusiasm. Amid the difficult, tedious work that consumed him day and night, the man had finally found a brief diversion. A ridiculous fool had come to perform for free. Liu Cixin could only press on.
Extraction would be done through a series of boreholes drilled from the surface into the coal seam. Existing oil field drilling rigs can make these holes. They have the following uses. First, to deploy large numbers of sensors into the seam. Second, to ignite the underground coal seam. Third, to inject water or steam into the seam. Fourth, to inject combustion air. And fifth, to lead out the gasified coal.
After the underground coal seam is ignited and comes into contact with steam, the following reactions occur. Carbon and water produce carbon monoxide and hydrogen. Carbon and water produce carbon dioxide and hydrogen. Then carbon and carbon dioxide produce carbon monoxide, and carbon monoxide and water again produce carbon dioxide and hydrogen. The final result is a combustible gas similar to water gas. Its combustible components are 50% hydrogen and 30% carbon monoxide. This is the gasified coal we obtain.
The sensors send information about combustion at each point in the coal seam and the production of combustible gases such as carbon monoxide back to the surface through infrasound signals. These signals are gathered by computer to generate a model of the seam's combustion field. From that model, we can control the range and depth of the combustion field from the surface through the boreholes, and control the degree of combustion. Specifically, we inject water to suppress combustion, or inject high-pressure air or steam to intensify it.
What concerns you most is, of course, controlling the combustion range. We can drill a row of boreholes in the direction of spread and inject high-pressure water to form an underground water wall that blocks combustion. Where the fire is stronger, we can also use the high-pressure cement grouting curtain used in dam construction to block it. Are you listening to me?
A burst of noise from outside the window drew the director's attention. Liu Cixin knew that the image produced in the director's mind by his words was certainly not the image in his own dream. The director knew very well what it meant to ignite an underground coal seam. On every continent of Earth there were burning coal mines, and China had several. The year before, Liu Cixin had seen Earthfire for the first time in Xinjiang. As far as the eye could see, the land and hills were barren. The air surged with hot waves that smelled of sulfur, making everything around him waver as if underwater, as if the whole world had been placed on a grill. At night, Liu Cixin saw faint red glows across the ground, light seeping out through countless cracks.
Liu Cixin approached one crack and leaned over to look inside. He sucked in a cold breath. It was like the mouth of hell. The red light rose from great depths, dim and shadowy, but its fierce heat could be felt. When he looked up again at the land under night, with streaks of red light showing through, Liu Cixin felt for a moment that the earth was a live coal wrapped in a thin crust. With him was a powerful Uyghur man named Aguli, captain of China's only professional coal seam firefighting team. Liu Cixin had gone there that time to recruit him into his laboratory.
I would almost be sorry to leave this place,
Aguli said in stiff Mandarin.
I grew up watching these earth fires. In my eyes, they have become an indispensable part of the world, like the sun and the stars.
You mean the fire has been burning since you were born? No, Dr. Liu. This fire has been burning since the Qing dynasty. At the time, Liu Cixin stood frozen before the rolling heat waves in the darkness. Shivering, Aguli went on.
When I agreed to help you, it would be more accurate to say I agreed to stop you. Listen to me, Dr. Liu. This is no game. You are doing the devil's work.
Ellipsis. By then, the noise outside the window had grown louder. The director stood and walked out, saying to Liu Cixin as he went,
Young man, I truly wish the ministry had used the 60 million it put into this project for something else. You have seen it yourself. There is too much that needs doing. See you.
Liu Cixin followed the director outside the office building and saw that even more people had joined the sit-in. A leader was shouting to the crowd. Liu Cixin could not make out what he was saying because his attention had been caught by a scene in one corner of the crowd. There he saw a large expanse of wheelchairs. In this era, people would not see so many wheelchairs gathered anywhere else. Behind them, more wheelchairs were still appearing, and in each wheelchair sat a miner who had lost a limb in an industrial accident. Liu Cixin felt he could not breathe. He tore off his tie, lowered his head, hurried through the crowd, and got into his car.
He drove aimlessly, his mind blank. After an unknown time, he braked and found himself on the top of a small hill. He had often come here as a child. From here one could overlook the whole mine. He stood there in a daze for another unknown length of time. What do you see?
A voice sounded. Liu Cixin turned and saw that Li Mingsheng had somehow appeared behind him. That is our school.
Liu Cixin pointed into the distance. It was a large mining town school, with middle school and primary school together. The large playground on campus stood out sharply. There, they had buried their childhood and youth. You think you remember everything from the past?
Li Mingsheng sat weakly on a rock beside him and said this. I do remember. That early autumn afternoon, the sun was gray. We were playing soccer on the field. Suddenly, everyone stopped and stared at the loudspeaker on the teaching building. Do you remember?
Funeral music came from the speaker. After a while, Zhang Zhenjun ran over barefoot and said Chairman Mao had died.
We called him a little counter-revolutionary and beat him badly. He cried and shouted that it was true, that Chairman Mao was truly dead. None of us believed him. We twisted his arms and dragged him toward the police station.
But our steps gradually slowed. Outside the school gate, funeral music was playing too, as if the whole world were filled with that black sound. In the 20-some years since, that funeral music has kept sounding in my mind. Recently, in that music, Nietzsche ran over barefoot and said God was dead.
Li Mingsheng smiled bleakly. I believed him. Liu Cixin turned abruptly and stared at his childhood friend. How did you become like this? I do not know you anymore. Li Mingsheng sprang to his feet and stared back at Liu Cixin, pointing with one hand at the black-gray world below.
How did the mind become like this? Do you still know it? Then he sat down again in collapse.
In that era, what a proud group our fathers were. What a proud group the great coal miners were. Take my father. He was an 8th-grade worker and earned 120 yuan a month. 120 yuan in Mao Zedong's time. Liu Cixin fell silent for a while and tried to change the subject.
How is your family? Your wife, she was called something Shan, right? Li Mingsheng gave another bitter smile.
Now even I have almost forgotten her name. Last year she told me she was going on a business trip, left me and our daughter, and vanished. More than 2 months later she sent a letter from Canada. She said she no longer wanted to bury her life with a coal black man.
That makes no sense. You are a senior engineer. All the same, Li Mingsheng swept his arm in a wide arc over the mine below. In their eyes, it is all the same. Coal black men. Do you remember how we resolved to become engineers?
That year, during the production drive, we went to bring food to our fathers. It was the first time we went underground. In that pitch-black place, I asked my father and the uncles, how do you know where the coal seam is? How do you know which direction to dig the roadway? And especially when you dig tunnels toward each other from 2 directions deep underground, how do you make them meet exactly?
Your father said, child, no one knows. Only engineers know. After we came up, he pointed to several people holding their helmets in their hands and standing around a drawing. Look, he said, those are engineers. In our eyes, then, those people were different. At least the towels around their necks were much whiter.
Now we have realized our childhood wish.
Of course, it is hardly glorious, but we still have to take responsibility and do something. Otherwise, would we not have betrayed ourselves? Shut up. Li Mingsheng stood up in anger.
I have always been taking responsibility, always been doing something. You are the one who lives in dreams all day. Do you really think you can bring coal miners out of the depths of the mine, turn this mine into a gas field? Even if all your theories and experiments succeed, what then? Have you calculated the cost of that thing? And what will you use to lay tens of thousands of kilometers of gas pipeline? You know we cannot even afford the railway freight for coal now.
Why not look farther ahead? A few years, a few decades from now.
To hell with that. We do not even know how we will live a few days from now. I told you you live on dreams. You always have since you were little. Of course, in that quiet old building at Liupukang in Beijing, where the National Coal Design Institute is, you can dream as much as you like. I cannot. I live in reality.
Li Mingsheng turned to go. Oh, I came to tell you that the director has arranged for our office to cooperate with your experiment. Work is work. I will do my best. In 3 days, I will give you the location and detailed data for the test seam. Then he left without looking back.
Liu Cixin stared blankly at the mine where he had spent his childhood and youth. He saw the tall head frame of the vertical shaft, the huge winding wheel turning at its top, sending an invisible cage down into the depths. He saw rows of electric mine cars moving in and out of the shaft where his father had worked. He saw beneath the coal-washing building a train slowly emerging from under a long row of countless coal hoppers. He saw the cinema and the playing field, where he had spent the best hours of childhood. He saw the tall building of the miner's bathhouse. Only coal mines had bathhouses that large. In that wide bathing pool, in water dyed black by coal dust, he had actually learned to swim.
Yes, in this place far from oceans and great rivers, he had learned to swim there. His gaze moved farther away and saw the tall Gang Mountain, a mountain of black rock picked out from mined coal over more than 100 years. It looked higher than the surrounding hills. Sulfur in the Gang heated under rainwater and sent up wisps of blue smoke. Everything here was covered by the years with a layer of coal dust. The whole mountain was black-gray. That, too, was the color of Liu Xin's childhood, the color of his life. He closed his eyes and listened to the sounds of the mine below. Time here seemed to have stopped flowing.
Ah, the mine of our fathers. My mine section break.
This was a valley not far from the mine. By day one could see the mine's smoke and steam rising from behind the hills. At night, one could see the glow cast on the sky by the mine's brilliant lights, and the mine whistles could be heard clearly. Now, Liu Cixin, Li Mingsheng, and Aguli stood in the center of the valley. It was desolate. In the distance, at the foot of a hill, a herdsman drove a flock of thin goats slowly past. Beneath this valley lay the isolated small coal seam where Liu Cixin intended to conduct his underground gasified coal mining test. Li Mingsheng and the engineers of the geology office had spent a month finding it among the mountain of geological files in the office archive.
This place is far from the main mining area, so the geological data is not very detailed.
Li Mingsheng said,
I have read your data. From what exists, the test seam is at least 200 meters from the large seam. That should be acceptable. We are going to begin.
Liu Cixin said excitedly. You are not a coal mine geologist, and you understand even less about the practical realities here. I advise you to be cautious. Think it over again.
This is not a matter of thinking it over. The experiment cannot begin at all.
Aguli said.
I have read the data too. It is too crude.
The exploration boreholes are too far apart, and all of them were drilled in the early 60s. A new exploration must be done. We must prove with certainty that this seam is isolated before the experiment can begin. Engineer Lee and I have drawn up an exploration plan.
How long would it take to complete exploration according to this plan? How much additional investment would it require? Li Mingsheng said, with the geology office's existing capacity, at least 1 month. I have not calculated the investment carefully, but I estimate at least around 2 million.
We have neither the time nor the money for that.
Then ask the ministry for instructions.
Aguli said.
The ministry? There has long been a group at the ministry who want to cut this project. The higher-ups are eager to see results. If I go back and request more time and more budget, would I not be walking straight into their trap? My intuition tells me there will be no major problem. Let us take a small risk.
Intuition? Risk? You want to use those two things on this matter? Dr. Liu, do you know what you are setting fire to, and you call this a small risk? I have already decided. Liu Cixin chopped the air decisively with his hand and walked ahead alone. Engineer Lee, why are you not stopping this madman? We had reached the same conclusion. Ogilvy questioned Li Mingsheng.
I only do what I ought to do. Li Mingsheng said coldly, "Section break."
More than 300 people were working in the valley. Besides physicists, chemists, geologists, and mining engineers, there were unexpected specialists. The dozen or so members of the coal seam firefighting team led by Aguli, 2 complete oil drilling crews from the Rincho oil field, and several hydraulic construction engineers and workers responsible for building the underground fire curtain. On this site, besides several tall drilling rigs and piles of drill pipe, one could see stacks of bagged cement and mixers. High-pressure slurry pumps roared as they forced cement grout into the strata. Rows of high-pressure water pumps and air pumps stood there, along with a spiderweb of tangled pipes in every color.
The project had been underway for 2 months. They had built an underground grouting curtain more than 2,000 meters in total length, encircling the small seam. It was originally a hydropower construction technique used to prevent seepage through dam foundations. Liu Cixin had thought of using it to build an underground firewall. Cement slurry injected under high pressure solidified in the strata, forming a tight barrier that Earthfire would find hard to penetrate. Inside the area encircled by the fire curtain, the drilling rigs had made nearly 100 deep holes, each reaching the coal seam. Each wellhead was connected to a pipe, which split into 3 branches leading to different high-pressure pumps. Through them, water, steam, and compressed air could be injected separately into the seam.
The final task was to release the field mice,
which was what people called the combustion field sensors. This marvelous device designed by Liu Cixin did not look like a mouse at all, but rather like a small artillery shell. It was 20 centimeters long, with a drill bit at the head and drive wheels at the tail. When a field mouse
was put into a borehole, it could use its drill bit and drive wheels to bore through the strata for more than 100 meters and move automatically to a specified position. They could all operate under high temperature and high pressure. After the coal seam was ignited, they used infrasound communications capable of penetrating rock to send various parameters from their locations to the main control computer. Now they had placed more than 1,000 UNDRA.
Field mice in the seam, half of them outside the fire curtain to monitor any earth fire that might penetrate it. Inside a large tent, Liu Cixin stood before a projection screen. The screen showed the ring of the fire curtain, and the computer marked the positions of all the field mice.
with flashing points according to received signals. They were densely distributed, and the whole screen looked like an astronomical star chart.
Everything was ready. 2 thick ignition electrodes were lowered through a borehole in the center of the curtain ring. Their cables ran directly into the large tent where Liu Cixin stood and connected to a switch with a big red button. All the staff had taken their positions and waited in excitement.
You had better think again, Dr. Liu. What you are doing is terrifying. You do not understand how powerful Earthfire is. Agilai said to Liu Cixin again.
Enough, Aguli. From the first day you came to me, you have spread panic everywhere, and even reported me all the way to the Ministry of Coal. But to be fair, you have made a great contribution to this project. Without your work this past year, I would not dare carry out the test rashly.
Dr. Liu, do not let the underground devil out. Do you think we can still give up now? Liu Cixin smiled and shook his head, then turned to Li Mingsheng standing beside him. Li Mingsheng said, "As you instructed, we have checked all the geological data for the 6th time. There is no problem."
Last night, we added another layer of curtain at some sensitive points. He pointed to several short line segments outside the curtain ring on the screen.
Liu Cixin went to the ignition electrode switch. When he placed his finger on the red button, he paused, closed his eyes as if praying, and moved his lips. Only Li Mingsheng, standing nearest him, heard the 2 words he said. Dad.
The red button was pressed. There was no sound, no flash. The valley remained the same valley, but deep underground, under a voltage of more than 10,000 volts, the ignition electrodes burst into a brilliant high-temperature arc inside the coal seam. On the projection screen, a small red point appeared at the location of the electrodes. The red point expanded quickly, like a drop of red ink falling onto rice paper.
Liu Cixin moved the mouse, and the screen changed to show the combustion field model generated by the computer from information sent back by the field mice.
It was an onion-shaped expanding sphere, each layer of the onion representing an isotherm. The high-pressure air pumps roared. Combustion air surged through multiple boreholes into the coal seam, and the combustion field swelled like an inflating balloon. An hour later, the control computer started the high-pressure water pumps. On the screen, the combustion field became like a balloon pricked by a needle, its shape twisting into complexity, though its volume did not shrink.
Liu Cixin left the tent. Outside, the sun had set, and the roars of many machines echoed through the darkening valley.
More than 300 people had gathered outside around an upright nozzle as thick as an oil drum. They opened a path for Liu Cixin, and he stepped onto the small platform below the nozzle. 2 workers were already there. When one saw Liu Cixin arrive, he began turning the nozzle's handwheel. The other lit a torch with a lighter and handed it to Liu Cixin. As the handwheel turned, a hiss of gas came from the nozzle. The hiss grew rapidly, like a hoarse giant roaring in the valley. All around, 300 tense, expectant faces appeared and vanished in the torchlight. Liu Cixin closed his eyes again and silently repeated those 2 words.
Dad. Then he extended the torch toward the nozzle and ignited humanity's first burning gasified coal well.
With a boom, a huge pillar of fire shot into the air, leaping more than 10 meters high. At the base where it met the nozzle, the pillar was transparent, pure blue. Higher up, it quickly became a dazzling yellow, then gradually reddened. It gave off a low, powerful howl in midair. Even the people farthest away could feel its surging heat. The surrounding mountains were lit bright by its radiance.
From afar, it looked like a brilliant sky lantern over the lowest plateau.
A gray-haired man stepped out of the crowd. It was the director. He took Liu Xin's hand and said, "A capsic shoulder congratulations of this rigid-minded laggard. You have done it. Still, I hope you extinguish it as soon as possible."
You still do not believe me. It cannot be extinguished. I want it to keep burning, so the whole country and the whole world can see it. The whole country and the whole world have already seen it. The director pointed at the television reporters, surging up behind him.
But you must know that the closest distance between the test seam and the surrounding large seam is less than 200 meters.
But at those dangerous locations, we drilled 3 fire curtains in succession, and several high-speed drilling rigs are on standby at all times. There is absolutely no problem.
I do not know. I am just very worried. This is a ministry project, and I have no authority to interfere. But any new technology, no matter how successful it seems, has hidden dangers. In the past few decades, I have seen many kinds of danger. Perhaps that is why my thinking is rigid. I truly am worried. Still.
The director extended his hand to Liu Cixin again. "I thank you all the same. You have let me see hope for the coal industry." He gazed at the fire pillar for a while longer. "Your father would be very happy."
Over the next 2 days, 2 more nozzles were ignited, bringing the number of fire pillars to 3. By then, the test seam's gas output, calculated at standard supply pressure, had reached 500,000 cubic meters per hour, equivalent to more than 100 large gas generators.
Adjustment of the underground seam's combustion field was performed entirely by computer. The combustion field area was strictly controlled within 2/3 of the total area inside the curtain ring, and its boundary remained stable. At the mine's request, several combustion control tests were conducted. On the computer, Liu Cixin drew a circle around the combustion field with the mouse, then held the mouse button and shrank the circle. As the roar of the high-pressure pumps outside changed, the actual combustion field area retreated inside the smaller circle within an hour.
Liu Cixin did not have much else to do. He spent all his time giving interviews and making outside contacts. Many large companies from China and abroad swarmed in, including giants such as DuPont and Exxon.
On the 3rd day, a member of the coal seam firefighting team found Liu Cixin and said their captain was about to collapse from exhaustion. For 2 days, Aguli had led the firefighting team through underground fire, extinguishing drills again and again like a madman. He had also, on his own authority, rented a satellite from the National Remote Sensing Center to monitor surface temperatures in the area. He had not slept for 3 nights, and at night he walked around inside and outside the curtain ring, near and far, for the whole night.
Liu Cixin found Aguli and saw that this powerful man had grown much thinner, his eyes bloodshot. "I cannot sleep," he said. "As soon as I close my eyes, I have nightmares. I see pillars of fire like this spouting everywhere from the earth, like a forest of fire," Liu Cixin said.
Renting a remote sensing satellite is a major expense. Although I do not think it is necessary, since it has already been done, I respect your decision. Aguli, I will still need you badly in the future. I do not think your coal seam firefighting team will have much to do, but even the safest place needs a fire brigade. You are exhausted. Go back to Beijing and rest for a few days.
Leave now? Are you insane?
You grew up above Earthfire, so you formed a fear of it that is rooted deep in you.
Right now, we still cannot control a combustion field as large as the Xinjiang coal mine Earthfires, but soon we will be able to. I plan to build the first commercially operating gasified coal field in Xinjiang. When that happens, the Earthfires there will be under our control, and the land of your hometown will be covered with beautiful vineyards.
Dr. Liu, I respect you deeply. That is why I work with you. But you always overestimate yourself. Before Earthfire, you are still only a child. Agulai smiled bitterly, shook his head, and walked away. Section break.
The disaster came on the 5th day. Dawn had just broken when Liu Cixin was shaken awake. He saw Aguli standing before him, panting, his eyes fixed and feverish, his trouser legs wet with dew. He held a laser-printed photograph up before Liu Xin's face, so close it nearly blocked his eyes. It was an infrared false-color remote sensing temperature image sent by satellite, like a brilliantly colored abstract painting. Liu Cixin did not understand it, and looked at him in confusion.
Go. Aguli roared, grabbed Liu Xin's hand, and rushed out of the tent. Liu Xin followed him up a mountain north of the valley. Along the way, Liu Xin became more and more puzzled. First, this was the safest direction. In this direction, the test seam was more than 1,000 meters from the large seam. Second, Aguli was leading him much too far. They were near the summit, and the curtain ring lay far below them. What could happen here? When they reached the summit, Liu Xin was gasping and about to challenge him, but Aguli pointed to a more distant place beyond the mountain. Liu Xin smiled with relief, laughing at Aguli's oversensitive nerves.
But after he looked for a long time in the direction Aguli indicated, he finally noticed something odd in the grass, low on the distant slope. A circle had appeared in the grass, and inside the circle the green was slightly darker than around it, so subtle that it was nearly invisible unless one looked carefully. Liu Xin's heart clenched. He and Aguli ran down the mountain toward that dark green circle in the grass.
When they reached it, Liu Xin knelt and examined the grass inside the circle, comparing it with the grass outside. He found that the grass had wilted and fallen flat, as if scalded by hot water. He pressed his hand to the ground and clearly felt heat from below. At the center of the circular area, a wisp of steam rose slowly in the newly appearing sunlight.
After a morning of emergency drilling, and after releasing more than 1,000 additional field mice, Liu Xin finally confirmed a nightmarish fact. The large coal seam was on fire. The burning range could not yet be determined, because the field mice
moved underground at only a little over 10 meters per hour. But the large seam was much deeper than the test seam, and its combustion heat had already reached the surface. That meant it had been burning for quite some time, and the fire field was already large.
There was something strange about it. The 1,000 meters of soil and rock between the burning large seam and the test seam were intact. The earth fire was burning on both sides of that 1,000-meter isolation zone. So some people suggested that the large seam fire had nothing to do with the test seam. But this was only comfort, and even the people who suggested it did not truly believe it. As exploration deepened, the truth was finally clarified late that night.
8 narrow coal bands extended out from the test seam. At their narrowest, these bands were only half a meter wide and very hard to detect. 5 of the coal bands had been cut off by the fire curtain, but 3 sloped downward and had just climbed to the bottom of the curtain. Of these 3,
Coal snakes.
2 ended midway, but 1 continued all the way to the large seam 1,000 meters away. These coal bands were actually cracks in the strata filled with coal. The cracks all connected to the surface, providing excellent oxygen supply for combustion. That coal band had become a fuse linking the test seam and the large seam.
None of these 3 coal bands had been marked in the geological data provided by Li Mingsheng. In fact, such long, narrow coal bands are extremely rare in coal mine geology. Nature had played a cruel joke.
I had no choice. My child has uremia and needs dialysis all the time. The project fee for this work was too important to me, so I did not do everything I could to stop you. Li Mingsheng's face was pale, and he avoided Liu Cixin's eyes.
Now they and Agulai stood on the mountain peak separating the 2 areas of Earthfire. It was another morning. All the grassland between the mine and the peak had turned deep green, and the circular area they had seen yesterday was now scorched yellow. Steam filled the valley below, and the mine could no longer be seen clearly.
Aguli said to Liu Cixin,
"My coal mine firefighting team in Xinjiang and a large amount of equipment have already reached Taiyuan by chartered plane. They will be here soon. Forces from other regions of the country are also converging here. From the current situation, the fire is fierce and spreading fast."
Liu Jin looked silently at Aguli for a long time before asking in a low voice, "There is still a chance, right?" Aguli gently shook his head. "Just tell me how much hope there is. If we seal the oxygen channels or inject water to put it out."
Aguli shook his head again. I have been doing that all my life, and Earthfire still destroyed my hometown.
I told you, before Earthfire you are only a child. You do not know what Earthfire is. Deep underground it is smoother than a viper and more unpredictable than a ghost. Wherever it wants to go, ordinary humans cannot stop it. Beneath us is a vast amount of high-quality anthracite, something the devil has longed for over hundreds of millions of years. Now you have released the devil. It will have infinite energy and power. The Earthfire here will be 100 times larger than Xinjiang's.
Liu Jin seized the weaker man's shoulders and shook him in despair. "Tell me how much hope there is. Please, tell me the truth."
0%.
Aguli said softly,
Dr. Liu, it will be very hard for you to atone for your sin in this lifetime.
Section break.
An emergency meeting was held in the Bureau building. Present were the main leaders of the Mining Bureau and the directors of the 5 mines, as well as a group of worried city officials, including the mayor. The first decision was to establish an emergency command center. The Bureau director became commander-in-chief, and Liu Cixin and Li Mingsheng were both members of the leadership group.
Engineer Li and I will do our utmost, but please understand that we are all criminals now.
Liu Jin said. Li Mingsheng sat beside him with his head lowered, saying nothing.
Now is not the time to discuss responsibility. Just work. Do not overthink.
The director looked at Liu Cixin and said,
"Do you know who said those last 5 words? Your father. At that time, I was a technician on his crew. Once, to meet the output target for our shift, I ignored his warning and expanded the mining area without authorization. A huge amount of water flooded the coal face, trapping more than 20 people from the crew in a corner of the roadway. Everyone's headlamps had gone out, and we did not dare use lighters, partly because of methane and partly because it would consume oxygen, since the water had sealed the place completely. It was so dark you could not see your hand before your face. Then your father told me he remembered there was another roadway above us, and the roof seemed not too thick. Then I heard him digging at the roof with a pick. The rest of us felt around for picks and followed him, digging in the dark.
There was less and less oxygen. We began to feel chest tightness and dizziness. And then there was that darkness, an absolute darkness that people on the surface never see. Only the sparks from pickheads striking the roof flashed. At that time, being alive was torment to me. Your father held me up. In the darkness, he said those 5 words to me again and again. Just work. Do not overthink. I do not know how long we dug. Just as I was about to lose consciousness from suffocation, a hole collapsed through the roof, and light from the explosion-proof lamps and the roadway above shone in. Later, your father told me he had not known how thick the roof was, but at that time, a person could only do this. Just work. Do not overthink. Over all these years, those 5 words have cut deeper and deeper into my mind. Now I am passing them to you for your father.
At the meeting, experts who had rushed in from all over the country quickly drew up a fire-extinguishing plan. There were not many methods to choose from, only 3. First, cut off oxygen to the underground fire field. Second, use grouting curtains to cut off fire paths. Third, inject large amounts of water into the underground fire field to extinguish it. All 3 measures would be carried out at once. But the first method had long been proven difficult because the oxygen channels leading underground were extremely hard to locate and, even if located, hard to seal. The second method worked only for shallow seam fires and was too slow to catch up with the rapid underground spread. The third method was the most hopeful.
The noose remained sealed off, and firefighting work proceeded quietly. Powerful drilling rigs urgently transferred from the Rincho oil field passed through the roads of the coal city under curious eyes. Troops entered the mining area. Helicopters began circling in the sky.
A mood of unease covered the mine, and all kinds of rumors began spreading like wildfire.
Large drilling rigs lined up across the head of the underground fire field. After the boreholes were completed, more than 100 high-pressure fire pumps began injecting water into well holes that emitted blue smoke and heat waves. The volume of injected water was enormous, so enormous that the mine and the city living district both lost all water supply, worsening social anxiety and unrest. But the injection results were encouraging. On the command center's big screen, dark circles appeared on the red front of the fire field, each centered on a borehole, indicating that water injection was sharply lowering the fire field's temperature. If this row of circles connected, there was hope of cutting off the fire's spread.
But this slightly comforting situation did not last long. Beside a tall drilling tower, the drilling team captain from the oil field found Liu Cixin. Dr. Liu, 2/3 of the well sites cannot be drilled any further. He shouted over the roar of the rigs and high-pressure pumps.
What kind of joke is that? We must greatly increase the number of water injection holes on the fire field now. Impossible. The well pressure at those sites is rising sharply. If we keep drilling, there will be a blowout.
Nonsense. This is not an oil field. There are no high-pressure oil or gas layers underground. How could there be a blowout? What do you know? I am stopping drilling and evacuating my people.
Liu Cixin angrily grabbed the captain's oil-stained collar. No, I order you to keep drilling. There will be no blowout. Do you hear me? There will not.
Before he finished speaking, a tremendous bang came from the drilling tower. The 2 men turned and saw a heavy borehole seal fly out split in 2. A yellow-black, muddy flow shrieked from the wellhead, with broken drill pipes flying out in all directions. Amid people's screams, the color of the turbulent flow gradually lightened as the sediment content decreased. Later, it turned snow-white, and people understood. The water injected underground had been heated by earthfire and become high-pressure steam. Liu Cixin saw the driller's corpse hanging from the very top of the drilling tower, swinging wildly in the impact of the white steam, appearing and disappearing. The other 3 workers on the drill floor had vanished.
An even more terrifying scene appeared. The head of the white dragon detached from contact with the ground and gradually rose. Finally, all the white steam rose above the drilling tower like a white-haired demon borne across the sky. Between that demon and the wellhead on the ground, apart from the damaged derrick, there was nothing at all. Only the terrible whistling could be heard. Several young workers thought the blowout had stopped and hesitantly stepped toward the drill floor, but Liu Cixin seized two of them and shouted,
"Do you want to die? Superheated steam."
The engineers present quickly understood what the strange sight meant, but it was not easy for others to understand. Contrary to common sense, steam itself cannot be seen. The white that people see is only tiny droplets formed after water vapor condenses in the air. Under high temperature and high pressure, water can form terrifying superheated steam at 400 or 500 degrees Celsius.
It does not condense quickly, so now it became visible only above the drilling tower. Steam like this normally exists only in high-pressure turbines at thermal power plants. Once it bursts from a high-pressure steam pipe, as such accidents have happened more than once, it can penetrate a brick wall in a short time. People watched in terror as the damp derrick was swiftly baked dry by the invisible superheated steam, and several thick rubber hoses hanging in the air melted like wax. That demonic steam struck the derrick with a roar that made the scalp crawl.
Underground water injection was now impossible. Even if it had been possible, the water injected into the underground fire field had begun to aid combustion more than extinguish it.
All members of the Emergency Command Headquarters came to the entrance of Number 4 shaft at Mine 3, closest to the Earthfire front.
The fire field is already close to this mine's working district.
Aguli said.
If the fire front reaches the working district, the mine roadways will become powerful oxygen supply channels for the Earthfire. Then the fire's strength will multiply many times. That is the situation.
He stopped speaking and looked uneasily at the director and the Mine 3 manager. He knew what coal miners most dreaded.
What is the situation underground now?
The director asked, without changing expression.
Coal extraction and tunneling are continuing normally in all 8 shafts, mainly for the sake of stability.
The mine manager answered, "Stop all production. Evacuate all underground personnel immediately." Then, the director stopped and was silent for 2 or 3 seconds.
Seal the mine.
The director finally spoke the 2 words most heartbreaking to coal miners.
No, we cannot.
Li Mingsheng cried out, then realized he had not yet thought of a reason. Seal the mine. Seal the mine. Society will fall into disorder at once, and also, enough. The director gently waved his hand. His eyes said everything. I know how you feel. I feel the same. Everyone does.
Li Mingsheng crouched on the ground with his head in his hands. His shoulders shook, but he could not make a sound of crying. The leaders and engineers of the mine stood silently facing the shaft mouth. The wide mouth of the shaft looked at them like a huge eye, just as it had looked at Liu Cixin in childhood more than 20 years before.
They were mourning this century-old mine. After an unknown length of time, the Bureau's chief engineer broke the silence in a low voice. As much underground equipment as can be brought out. Bring it out.
Then,
the mine manager said,
"Organize the blasting team."
The director nodded. Time is tight. You begin. I will ask the ministry for instructions at the same time. The Bureau Party Secretary said.
Can we not use combat engineers? A blasting team made up of miners. I am afraid there will be problems.
We considered that, the mine manager said.
But the Army engineers who have arrived amount to only 1 platoon. Even for 1 shaft, they are far from enough. And besides, they are not familiar with underground blasting work.
Ellipsis. Number 4 shaft. closest to the fire field, was the first to stop production. When batches of underground miners rode electric mine cars up to the entrance, they found a blasting team of more than 100 men waiting around a pile of drill pipe. People went up to ask what was going on, but the miners and the blasting team did not know what they were supposed to do either. They had only been ordered to assemble with drilling equipment. Suddenly, everyone's attention was drawn in one direction. A convoy was driving toward the shaft entrance. The first truck was full of armed police soldiers, who jumped down and marked out a parking area for the trucks behind.
Behind it came 11 trucks. After they stopped, the canvas covers were quickly pulled back, revealing neatly stacked yellow wooden crates. The miners were stunned. They knew what those were.
10 full truckloads. Number 2 ammonium nitrate mine explosive. 24 kilograms per crate, about 50 tons in total. On the last, smaller truck were bundles of bamboo strips used for tying explosive sticks, and a large pile of black plastic bags. The miners knew those bags held electric detonators.
Liu Cixin and Liu Cixin had just jumped down from the cab of a vehicle when they saw the newly appointed blasting team captain, a sturdy man with a full beard, walking toward them with a roll of drawings in his hand.
Engineer Li, what are you making us do?
The captain asked while spreading out the drawing. Liu Cixin pointed at the drawing, his hand trembling slightly.
3 blasting belts, each 35 meters long. The exact positions are on the lower drawing. Blast holes are of 2 types, 150 millimeters and 75 millimeters. The charge is 28 kilograms per meter and 14 kilograms per meter, respectively. The blast hole density.
I am asking what you want us to do. Under the captain's fire-filled stare, Liu Cixin lowered his head without a word. Brothers, they want to blow up the main roadway.
The captain turned and shouted to the crowd. A commotion ran through the miners. Then they pressed forward like a wall. The armed police formed a semicircle to keep the crowd away from the trucks, but under the irresistible pressure of that black sea of people, the line bent and deformed and was about to be broken. All of this happened in gloomy silence. Only the scrape of footsteps and the sounds of rifle bolts could be heard. At the last moment, the crowd stopped surging. The miners saw the director and the mine manager appear on the running board of a truck.
I have worked in this shaft since I was 15. You are going to destroy it.
An old miner shouted. The knife-carved wrinkles on his face were clear even under thick coal dust. If the shaft is blown up, how are we supposed to live afterward? Why blow up the shaft? Life at the mine is already hard. What are you stirring up now? Ellipsis.
The crowd exploded. Angry waves of voices rose one after another. In that sea of black faces covered with coal dust, white teeth stood out. The director waited calmly. The crowd began to stir again inside the angry sound. When it was about to lose control a second time, he began to speak.
Everyone, look over there. He pointed to a small hill beside the shaft entrance. His voice was not loud, but the angry sound immediately quieted. Everyone looked in the direction he pointed.
At the top of that small hill stood a black column of coal more than 2 meters high, uneven in thickness. A stone railing covered with coal dust circled it.
Everyone calls that thing the old coal pillar. But do you know that when it was first erected, it was not a pillar but a square block of coal? More than 100 years ago, Governor Zhang Zhidong of the Qing dynasty set it up at the mine's founding ceremony. More than a century of wind and rain eroded it into a pillar. In these 100+ years, how many disasters and hardships has our mine gone through? Who can remember them all? It is not a short time, comrades. 4 or 5 generations. In so long a time, we ought to remember something, ought to learn something. If we truly can remember nothing and learn nothing, then we should at least remember and learn one thing, and that is—
The director raised both hands toward the black sea of people. The sky will not fall. The crowd froze in the air, as if even breathing had stopped.
China's industrial workers, China's proletariat. None have a longer history than we do. None have endured more storms and disasters than we have. Has the sky fallen for coal miners? No. The fact that so many of us can stand here now and look at that old coal pillar is proof. Our sky has not fallen. It did not fall in the past, and it will not fall in the future.
As for hardship, what is strange about that, comrades? When have we coal miners ever had easy days? Count back to our ancestors. When did we ever live easy lives? Count on your fingers. In China, in the world, how many industries are there? How many kinds of workers? Which kind has it harder than we do? None. Truly, none. What is strange about hardship? It would be strange if things were not hard, because we not only have to hold up the sky, we have to hold up the earth as well. If we feared hardship, our line would have died out long ago.
But society and science are developing. Many capable people are thinking of solutions for us, and now a solution has been found. We have hope of completely changing our lives. We will walk out of the dark mines and mine coal under the sun, under the blue sky. Coal mining will become the most envied job. That hope has just appeared. If you do not believe it, go look at those fire pillars in South Valley. But this very effort has triggered a disaster. We will give everyone a detailed accounting of that. For now, you only need to understand that this may be the last hardship coal miners have to endure. It is the price paid for our better tomorrow. Let us hold together and get through this hardship.
I will say the same thing again. So many generations have come through. The sky will not fall. After the crowd silently dispersed, Liu Cixin said to the director, "Now I have truly come to know you and my father. I can die without regret. Just work. Do not overthink."
The director patted Liu Cixin on the shoulder and squeezed it. Section break. One day after blasting work began in the main roadway of number 4 shaft, Liu Cixin and Li Mingsheng walked side by side through the main roadway. Their footsteps gave off hollow echoes. They were passing the first blasting belt. Under the dim overhead lamps, the high roof of the roadway could be seen densely covered with blast holes. Detonating wires poured down from above like a colored waterfall and gathered in a heap on the ground.
Li Mingsheng said, "I used to think I hated the mine, hated it for swallowing my youth. Only now do I know that I have become one with it. Hate or love, it is my youth."
We should not torture ourselves too much,
Liu Jin said.
After all, we did accomplish something. If not martyrs, then fallen in action.
They fell silent, both realizing that they had spoken of death. At that moment, a ghoulie ran up from behind, panting. "Engineer Li, look." He pointed at the roof of the roadway. He meant several thick canvas tubes used for underground ventilation. Now they had collapsed flat.
My God, when did the ventilation stop? Li Mingsheng turned pale with alarm. 2 hours ago. Li Mingsheng quickly used the walkie-talkie to call over the mine ventilation section chief and 2 ventilation engineers.
There is no way to restore ventilation, Engineer Li. The ventilation equipment below, the blowers, motors, explosion-proof switches, even some of the piping, has all been removed.
The ventilation section chief said, "You bastard. Who told you to remove it? Are you trying to get yourself killed?" Li Mingsheng, unlike himself,
broke into a torrent of abuse.
Engineer Lee, what kind of talk is that? Who told us to remove it? It was the Bureau's decision to transfer as much underground equipment as possible before sealing the mine. You and I both attended the shutdown arrangement meeting. Our people worked day and night for 2 days and brought up equipment worth more than 1,000,000 yuan, and all we get from you is this scolding. Besides, the shaft is already sealed. What damned ventilation is there to keep?
Li Mingsheng gave a long sigh. Even now the truth had not been made public, so such contradictions had appeared.
What does that matter?
After the ventilation people left, Liu Cixin asked,
Should ventilation not have stopped? Would that not reduce the oxygen flow underground?
Dr. Liu, you really are a giant in theory and a dwarf in action. Once you touch reality, you understand nothing. You really are, like Engineer Lee said, all you can do is dream.
Li said, ever since the coal seam caught fire, he had not been polite to Liu Cixin, Li Mingsheng explained.
The coal seam here has a high methane incidence. Once ventilation stops, methane will gather underground very quickly. When the Earthfire arrives, it may trigger a huge explosion. Its power could blow open the sealed shaft mouth or at least blast out new oxygen channels. No, we must add another blasting belt.
But Engineer Lee, the second blasting belt above is only half finished, and the third has not even started. The Earthfire is already very close to the southern working district. We may not have time even to finish the original 3.
Liu Cixin said carefully.
I have an idea, though I do not know whether it would work.
Huh! How do you people put it? This is a first under heaven.
Li said with a cold laugh.
Dr. Liu has something he's unsure about? Dr. Liu has something he needs to ask others before deciding?
I mean, the deepest blasting belt is already finished. Could we detonate that one first? Then, if there is an underground explosion, at least there will be one barrier.
If that worked, we would have done it already.
Li Mingsheng said,
The blasting scale is huge. After detonation, toxic gas and dust in the roadway will not disperse for a long time, making later construction impossible.
The Earthfire was spreading faster than expected. The construction leadership group decided to detonate after completing only 2 blasting belts and to withdraw construction personnel from underground as soon as possible. Near dusk, everyone was in the production building not far from the shaft entrance, gathered around a drawing and studying how to use a branch roadway to lead the firing line out by the shortest route. Suddenly, Li Mingsheng said,
Listen, a low sound came faintly from underground like the earth belching. A few seconds later came another.
It is a methane explosion. The Earthfire has reached the working district.
Li said tensely. Did they not say there was still some distance? No one answered. Liu Xin's field mouse detectors had been used up, and the existing backward detection methods made it very hard to know the Earthfire's position and advance speed accurately. Evacuate them, now.
Li Mingsheng picked up the walkie-talkie, but however loudly he shouted, there was no response.
Before I came up, I saw Captain Zhang afraid the walkie-talkie would be damaged while he worked, so he put it together with the wires. Dozens of drilling machines are working down there at the same time. It is very loud.
A miner from the blasting team said.
Li Mingsheng sprang up and rushed out of the production building without even putting on his safety helmet. He called an electric mine car and drove underground at the highest speed. In the instant before the car disappeared into the shaft entrance, Liu Cixin, who had run after him, saw Li Mingsheng wave to him and saw him smiling. He had not smiled for a very long time.
Several more belches came from underground, and then it became calm.
Could that series of explosions just now have consumed the methane underground?
Liu Cixin asked an engineer beside him. The man looked at him in surprise. Consumed it? What a joke. It will only release even more methane from the coal seam.
Sure enough, a thunderous explosion rose to the sky, as if the earth had exploded beneath their feet. The shaft entrance was instantly submerged in red flame. The blast wave threw Liu Cixin high into the air, and the world spun madly before his eyes. Flying and falling with him were scattered stones and railroad ties. Liu Cixin also saw one car of the electric mine train fly out of the flames at the shaft mouth like a pit spat from a mouth. He struck the ground heavily, and shattered stones rained down around him. He felt that every stone was covered in blood. Liu Cixin then heard several muffled explosions. Those were the underground explosives detonating. Before losing consciousness, he saw the flames at the shaft mouth disappear, replaced by rolling black smoke.
1 year later.
Liu Cixin seemed to be walking through hell. The entire sky was black with smoke clouds, and the sun was a barely visible dark red disk. Because of static electricity from friction among dust particles, ghostly lightning appeared from time to time within the smoke. Each flash made the mine above the Earthfire stand out in blue light, and each image was branded into his mind like a mark from a hot iron.
Smoke and dust poured from each shaft mouth of the mine. Each mouth exhaled a pillar of smoke. At the base, the pillar reflected the Earthfire's hideous dark red glow, then gradually turned black as it rose, like writhing monstrous snakes between heaven and earth.
The road was scorching. The asphalt surface had melted, and each step almost tore the soles from Liu Xin's shoes. The road was packed with fleeing people and vehicles. The stifling air was full of sulfur, and ash like snowflakes fell from the sky from time to time. Everyone wore a breathing mask, and white ash covered their bodies. The road was jammed. Fully armed soldiers maintained order. A helicopter moved through the smoke clouds, using a loudspeaker in the air to urge people not to panic. Evacuation had begun in winter, originally planned to take a year, but now the Earthfire had suddenly intensified, forcing an emergency acceleration.
Everything was in chaos. The court hearing for Liu Cixin had been postponed again and again, so much so that the waiting room where he was held had briefly been left unguarded that morning. In a daze, he had walked out.
Beyond the road, the ground was dry and cracked, the cracks filled with thick dust. Each step stirred up clouds of dust.
The small pond gave off rolling steam. The black water was covered with the bodies of fish and frogs. It was high summer, yet there was not a trace of green. All the grass on the ground had withered yellow and lay buried in dust. The trees were dead too. Some still sent up blue smoke, their charred branches reaching toward the dim sky like strange hands. All the buildings were empty. Some gave off thick smoke through their windows. Liu Cixin saw rats driven from their holes by the heat of the Earthfire, their numbers astonishing, great masses surging across the road. As Liu Cixin walked deeper into the mine, he felt the Earthfire's heat more and more. The heat rose from his ankles through his body. The air became hotter, more stifling, and more filthy. Even with the mask, breathing was difficult.
The Earthfire's heat was uneven on the surface. Liu Cixin instinctively avoided the scalding ground, and fewer paths remained passable. In areas where the Earthfire's heat protruded upward, buildings had caught fire. From the sea of flames came the occasional huge crash of collapsing structures. Liu Cixin had reached the shaft area. He passed a vertical shaft that had become a smoke flue for the Earthfire. Its tall headframe glowed red hot. The hot current struck the frame with a scalp-numbing scream, and the rolling heat wave forced him to make a wide detour. The coal-washing building had been swallowed by dense smoke. Behind it, the coal mountain had burned for many days and had become a huge live coal, giving off red light and flame.
There was no one left to be seen. Liu Xin's feet were blistered by heat. Sweat had nearly drained from his body. The strain of breathing had brought him to the edge of shock. But his mind was clear. With the last energy of his life, he walked toward his final goal. The red glow of Earthfire spouting from that shaft mouth was calling to him. He arrived, and he smiled.
Liu Xin turned toward the production building opposite the shaft mouth. Fortunately, although thick smoke poured from the top-floor windows, the building had not yet caught fire. He entered through the open doorway and turned into a large pre-shift changing room. Earthfire from the shaft mouth shone through the windows, filling the room with a hazy red light. Everything leapt in that red light, including the row of clothes lockers. Liu Xin walked along the row, carefully reading the numbers on them, and soon found the one he wanted. About this locker he remembered something from childhood. His father had just been transferred to this mining crew as team leader. It was the wildest crew, famous for being hard to manage.
Those wild young men had not taken his father seriously at all. Of course not. At the pre-shift meeting, he looked so pitiful, timidly asking someone to nail back on a locker door that had fallen off. Naturally, no one paid attention. The young men just threw cards and cursed at the side. His father had to say, "Then find me a few nails and I will do it myself." Someone tossed him a few nails. His father said, "Find me a hammer too." This time, no one answered. But then the young men suddenly fell silent. Dumbfounded, they watched his father press those nails one by one into the wood with his thumb. Things changed after that. The young men soon stood in a row, listening in awe to his father's pre-shift talk.
Now the locker was not locked. Liu Cixin pulled it open and found that clothes were still inside. He smiled again, imagining the miners who had used his father's locker over more than 20 years. He took out the clothes, first putting on the thick work trousers, then the equally thick work jacket. The suit was coated with a heavy layer of oily mud and gave off a strong smell of sweat and oil, a smell Liu Cixin was not unfamiliar with. It truly calmed him, placing him in a state almost like happiness. Then he put on rubber boots, picked up a safety helmet, took the mine lamp from the innermost part of the locker, wiped dust from it with his sleeve, and clipped it to the brim of the helmet.
He looked for a battery, but there was none. So he opened another locker. There was one. He fastened the heavy mine lamp battery to his waist with a belt, then suddenly thought that it had not been charged. After all, the mine had been completely shut down for a year. But he remembered where the lamp room was, just across from the changing room. More than once in childhood, he had seen the women workers there spray smoking sulfuric acid onto batteries to charge them. Now that would not do. The lamp room was shrouded in yellow sulfuric acid smoke. Solemnly, he put on the safety helmet with the mine lamp and walked to a dust-covered mirror. In the mirror, flickering with red light, he saw his father.
"Dad, I am going down the mine for you,"
Liu Xin said with a smile, then turned and walked out of the building, striding toward the shaft mouth that spouted Earthfire.
A helicopter pilot later recalled that he had been flying low over number 2 shaft at the time, making a final patrol of that area. He seemed to see a human figure at the shaft mouth. In the red light of Earthfire inside the shaft, the figure was a black silhouette, as if walking down into the mine. In the blink of an eye, the shaft mouth held only firelight again, and nothing else could be seen.
Section break 120 years later. From the diary of a middle school student,
People in the past were so stupid. People in the past had it so hard. Do you know where that impression came from? Today, I visited the Coal Museum. But what impressed me most was one thing.
There was actually solid coal.
First, we put on a strange set of clothes. It had a helmet, and on the helmet was a lamp. The lamp was connected by a wire to a heavy rectangular object hanging at our waists. At first, I thought it was a computer, though it was far too big. Who would have guessed it was just the lamp's battery? A battery that big could drive a high-speed racing car, yet it was used only to light that tiny lamp. We also put on tall rain boots. The teacher told us this was the underground clothing of early miners. Someone asked what underground meant. The teacher said we would know soon enough.
We boarded a string of iron cars running on narrow rails, a little like an early train, but much smaller. Overhead, a wire supplied power to the cars. They started moving and soon plunged into a black tunnel mouth. It was truly dark inside. Only a dim lamp occasionally swept past above. The lamps on our heads were weak too, barely enough to see the faces around us.
The wind was strong, howling past our ears. It felt as if we were falling into an abyss. Ina screamed. Annoying. She always screams like that.
Students, we are going underground,
the teacher said.
After an unknown time, the car stopped. From this relatively wide tunnel, we entered one of its branches. This tunnel was narrow and low. If I had not been wearing a helmet, my head would already have several bumps. The circles of light from our headlamps swung back and forth, but we could not see anything clearly. Aina and several girls again cried out that they were afraid.
After a while, the space before us opened somewhat. Many pillars supported the roof.
Across from us, I saw many more points of light, also from lamps like those on our helmets. When we approached, I discovered many people working there. Some used a drilling machine with a very long drill rod to bore holes into the tunnel wall. I do not know what powered it, but the sound made my scalp crawl. Others used shovels to load some black thing I could not see clearly onto rail cars and conveyor belts. From time to time, dust rose and hid them. Many headlamps drew beams of light through the dust.
Students, the place where we are now is called the coal face. What you are seeing is a scene of early miners at work. Several miners walked toward us. I knew they were all holograms, so I did not move aside. Their bodies passed through mine, and I saw them very clearly. What I saw shocked me.
Teacher, did Chinese coal mines back then employ only black people? To answer that question, we will let you experience the air of coal mining work at that time realistically. Remember, this is only an experience, so please take the breathing mask from your right pocket and put it on.
After we put on the masks, we heard the teacher's voice again. Children, pay attention. This is real, not a hologram.
A cloud of black dust drifted over. Our headlamps scattered into beams of light, and I watched in amazement as dense dust grains fluttered and sparkled inside the beams. Then Ina screamed again like the lead singer of a chorus, and several girls screamed after her. Later, even boys' voices joined in. I turned my head to laugh at them, but when I saw their faces, I screamed too. Everyone had become black, with only the small parts covered by breathing masks still white. Then I heard another scream, and my hair stood on end. It was the teacher screaming.
My God, Sia, you are not wearing a mask. Sia really was not wearing a mask. Like the holographic miners,
he had become the most authentic black person there. In history class, you repeatedly emphasized that the key to studying this subject is to feel past eras. I wanted to truly feel it.
As he spoke, his white teeth flashed against his black face.
An alarm sounded from somewhere. In less than a minute, a teardrop-shaped miniature hovercar stopped silently among us. It really spoiled the atmosphere to see such a modern thing here. 2 medical workers got out. By now, the real coal dust had been completely absorbed, leaving only the holographic dust floating around. So when the doctors walked through the
coal dust, their white clothing remained spotless. They grabbed Sia and led him toward the vehicle.
Child,
One doctor said, staring at him.
your lungs have been seriously damaged. You will need at least a week in the hospital. We will notify your parents.
Wait, Saya shouted, shaking the delicate, fully isolated recirculating mask in his hand. Did miners more than 100 years ago wear this thing too?
Stop talking nonsense. Go to the hospital, you child. This is outrageous.
The teacher said in exasperation, I'm the same kind of person as our ancestors. Why? Before Sia could finish, he was forced into the vehicle. This is the first accident of this kind in the museum. You will be held responsible.
Before getting into the car, one doctor pointed at the teacher and spoke sternly. The hovercar left as silently as it had come. We continued the tour. The dejected teacher said,
Every job underground was full of danger and required enormous physical strength. Take these iron supports as an example. After mining on this face was completed, all of them had to be recovered. This work was called roof caving.
We saw a miner strike an iron pin in the middle of a support with a hammer, split the support into 2 sections, remove it, and carry it away. Another boy and I tried to move a support already lying on the ground, and only then learned how terribly heavy it was.
Roof caving was a very dangerous job because while the supports were being removed, the roof of the working face could collapse at any moment.
At that moment, an ominous scraping sound came from above. I raised my head, and in the circle of my self-mined lamp, saw the rock over the section where the support had just been removed opening a crack. Before I could react, it collapsed. The holographic image of large rocks passed through my body and fell to the ground with a crash. Dust rose and covered everything.
This underground accident is called a roof fall. The teacher's voice sounded nearby. Everyone pay attention. Rock that injures people does not only come from above.
Before the words ended, a wall of rock beside us actually rushed vertically toward us. The huge wall of rock surged out a considerable distance before turning into a heap of stone and crashing down, as if an enormous palm had pushed it from within the strata.
The holographic rocks buried us. After a tremendous crash, all our headlamps went out. In the darkness and the girls' screams, I heard the teacher's voice again. This underground accident is called a gas outburst. Mine gas is a kind of gas sealed inside the rock under enormous pressure. What we just saw was the wall of the working face being unable to withstand that pressure and being pushed out by it.
Everyone's headlamps lit again, and we all breathed a long sigh of relief. Then I heard a strange sound, sometimes high and surging, like 10,000 horses galloping, sometimes low, like several giants whispering. Children, pay attention. The flood is coming.
While we were still confused, a thick, surging torrent burst from the mouth of a nearby roadway. The entire working face was quickly submerged.
We watched the muddy water rise to our knees, then past our waists. The surface reflected our headlamps and cast blurred bright patterns on the rock overhead. Railroad ties blackened by coal dust floated on the water, along with miners' helmets and lunch pails. When the water reached my chin, I instinctively took a deep breath, and then I was completely underwater. I could see only a chaotic yellow blur lit by the beam of my headlamp, and strings of bubbles rising now and then below.
Underground floods have many sources. They may be groundwater, or a mine may break through into a surface water source, but they threaten human life far more than floods on the surface. The teacher's voice sounded under the water.
The holographic water vanished in an instant, and everything around us returned to normal. Then I saw a strange thing, like a big iron toad with a swollen belly, very large and heavy. I pointed it out to the teacher.
That is an explosion-proof switch, because mine gas underground is combustible. Explosion-proof switches avoid the electric sparks produced by ordinary switches. This relates to the terrible underground danger we are about to see.
Another tremendous bang came, but it was different from the previous two. It seemed to come from inside our bodies, breaking through our eardrums to the outside. A powerful impact from every direction compressed every cell in me. In a scorching heat wave, all of us were submerged in a red glow. The glow was emitted by the surrounding air and filled every inch of the underground space. A moment later, the red light vanished rapidly, and everything fell into boundless darkness.
Very few people truly saw methane explosions because those who encountered them underground rarely survived. The teacher's voice echoed through the darkness like a ghost.
Why did people in the past come to such a terrible place?
Aina asked. For this, the teacher lifted a black stone. In the beams of our headlamps, countless small facets on it glittered. In this way, I saw solid coal for the first time.
Children, what we just saw was a coal mine in the mid-20th century. Later, some new machines and technologies appeared, such as hydraulic supports and large machines for cutting coal seams. These devices entered mines in the last 20 years of that century and improved underground working conditions somewhat, but coal mines remained places with harsh environments and danger everywhere, until...
What came afterward was dull. The teacher told us the history of gasified coal, saying that the technology had been fully put into use 80 years ago. At that time, the world's petroleum was about to run out, and the major powers had deployed troops in the Middle East to fight over the few remaining oil fields. World War was on the verge of breaking out, and gasified coal technology saved the world. We all know this already. Boring.
We went on to visit a modern coal mine. What was so special? It was just the many large pipes we see every day coming out of the ground and leading into the distance. Still, this was the first time I entered the central control building. I saw the hologram of the combustion field. It was huge. I also saw neutrino sensors and gravitational wave radar monitoring the underground combustion field and laser drilling machines. Still boring.
When reviewing the history of this mine, the teacher said that more than 100 years ago it had been destroyed by an uncontrolled earth fire. The fire burned for 18 years before it was extinguished. During that period, in our beautiful city, plants smoked, the sun and moon gave no light, and the people were displaced. There are several explanations for the cause of the fire. Some say it was caused by an underground weapons test. Others say it was connected to Greenpeace at the time. We need not long for the so-called good old days. Life then was full of hardship, danger, and confusion. Nor should we be too depressed about today's era,
because today too will one day be called the good old days. People in the past were so stupid. People in the past had it so hard. The end.